All right, y'all, we got a lot to talk about today. I'm so proud of Charlamagne the God. He went on the Native Land podcast and was speaking to Tiffany Cross, Angela Rye, Andrew Gillum, and the rest of the cast what they got on over there. And he finally checked them, and he kind of exposed them for who they actually were, and it gets really, really bad. But I'm actually proud of him for doing this, because typically he leans on the liberal ideologies where they like to cancel and silence other people. Doesn't matter if they're white or black, if things just don't really go their way. If you guys don't remember, a couple weeks ago, Mark Lamont Hill, Queen Flip, they got into an argument on the Joe Budden podcast, right? The argument got heated, it went viral, and Mark Lamont Hill is an intellectual, right? And he usually hangs out with some of the people like the Angela Rye, the Tiffany Cross, individuals who are on CNN and Fox speaking about political matters, world issues, geopolitics, all things of that nature, right? The Joe Budden podcast, their podcast, they talk about hip-hop, culture, things of that nature. They're not talking about politics and all these things about how to save the world and how to save the black community. No, it's a podcast for fun and things of that nature. It's not necessarily the same as a political podcast. So they get in their podcast and they really speak about how the Joe Budden podcast is dumbing down America. And he basically speaks to the men that are on that podcast and the young ladies that are on the podcast like they're beneath them, like their voices should not be heard, they shouldn't be listened to, and they would never even be found in a room with them. Joe Budden responds back and goes off on them. I'm going to show you guys that back and forth right now, and then we're going to get into what Charlamagne had to say to them on their podcast today. Let's get into it.
We say on this show, welcome home, and we mean that. Of course, Mark is welcome anytime. I don't know about the rest of them. So I just want Mark to know I'm praying for you, brother. You know that. And I want better for him. I think that he deserves to hold space with people who are at least more compassionate and more eager to learn from his perspective.
I'm not saying it's something wrong with engaging the flips of the world. I would never say, Andrew, Bakari, Angela, y'all should not engage flips. I'm saying I, Tiffany, have no desire to engage the flips of the world. I don't choose to be in a conversation, but that's just not my ministry. I wouldn't be good at it. And I just have no desire. And yes, I do not respect everybody's opinion on everything. And yes, we respect each other's opinion here on most things, but there are some things. I mean, Bakari, if you came to me and was like, oh, your period coming, you got a cramp, this is what you need to do. I'm probably like, what are you basing that on, Bakari? Like, where did you get that from? Like, that's not necessarily your area of expertise. I
got that off Instagram.
Oh. As you can see, like, they pretty much came at the Joe Budden podcast, basically said that your opinions don't matter. I don't know why Mark is even over there, why Mark is even speaking with these people. He's too smart, he's too intellectual. But what's funny to me is, like Joe Budden is going to express here, is Joe Budden's the only one who gave Mark Lamont Hill a job after he got fired. See, all these people that are on this Native Land podcast, they all got fired. They all had to create this podcast because they got fired from these white networks that they call that are so racist. But yet a black owner that Joe Budden owns all of his shit, he was the one who gave him a job, but now he is too beneath them. This is why I say this whole white supremacy, these white it's all a facade. And we have these these black boule people, these bougie people that think that they're better than everyone and only their opinions matter. Listen to what Joe Budden had to say in response.
Acceptance of her non-invitation becomes relevant, right? Like Angela, right? I can assure you, like, I've got over 25 years in this business. I can assure you, if you and I are in the same place, it's a mistake on my part. Like, I'm all for people saying who's invited and uninvited places, so I ain't mad at it. But we would never be in the same space. You, quote-unquote, intellectuals seem to be pulling a lot from places that, again, like it said, you admittedly know very little about. It just comes off a way.
Yeah,
it comes off a way.
It's like if you put,
especially when you pretending to do all of this super black kumbaya. I got a problem with that too. I got a problem with the people that masquerade as kumbaya, super black, all for the people, and I'll be the first one to tell you how we're different. I come on here every week and say we're less different than we are alike. We just got different ideologies. But I'm not going to keep listening to people who in 25 years, I've never said the name Angela Rye.
But he said it best. We have different ideologies. And so they act as if this is a white-black thing. This isn't a white-black thing. This is an ideological thing. If you have a different ideology than the Liberal Party, the Democratic Party, or against some of these people, they just want to cancel you, cut you off, and completely shut you down. They don't want to hear from you. They don't want anyone else to hear from you, and they want to completely silence you. And that's the problem that we have in our society. But the greater problem that I have in this, them doing their research, they don't even know what goes on in the Joe Budden podcast. They made it seem earlier on the podcast like it was Mark being attacked by all these thugs and demons, and they aren't smart enough to understand Mark, so they're just going to be in an outburst. No, Mark was actually the one that was wrong in that situation. Mark was the one that had the outburst, right? Mark was called a sucker by Flip because they were making a joke about how Mark talks to Joe Budden behind the scenes about Flip and everyone on the cast is pay and how they should be being paid less. It was a joke between Joe and Mark. He doesn't really do that, but that's what it was being portrayed as. So Flip said, wait, you're talking about how I should be being paid less. You're a sucker for that. I think Flip had the right to go off on Mark, and Mark was the one who overreacted in that moment because they were just doing content. The funniest part about this, again, Charlamagne was the one who actually, created these individuals. I believe that they're on the Black Effect Network. I believe that Charlamagne owns the Black Effect Network. And so without Charlamagne, they wouldn't be here. And so Charlamagne, to their boss, is actually checking them. But check out what he got to say.
I agree with Joe. I felt like, it came off, very elitist, very Jack and Jill, very, I got my nose up at these Negroes. My biggest issue with it was, well, damn, a person who's an intellectual should look at the whole context of a situation before they have a conversation about it. I feel like, Andrew said one of the strongest points last week when Andrew was like, I don't watch this show enough to have an opinion about it. and then he said, but I trust Mark, being Mark to be in spaces where, he knows he needs to be in. And as I'm listening to the convo, I told Angela that even when she told me that y'all wanted to talk about it, it came up as a topic of discussion. I said, well, make sure you watch the whole thing in context before you just watch a clip of it and then, speak on it for the next 20 or 30 minutes, because
I think that's a great point too. It's like you don't think Mark is not grown enough to understand where he should and he should not be? Like, what are we really talking about? Who are y'all to tell and say that Mark should even be in that crowd or that community of people? Like, who the fuck is y'all? Who are y'all?
To me, that's what an intellectual should do, right? Like, that's what an intelligent person should do. An intelligent person should get the whole context of something before they comment on it, instead of watching like 2 or 3 minutes of something and then actually taking the clip out of context. Because if you watch the clip in context, Mark was actually wrong. If there's a right or wrong in the situation, Mark was actually the one who was wrong in that situation, so much so that he even came back and apologized, the next week. And the conversation just kind of.
Exactly. Mark was the one that was actually wrong in this situation. Now, again, Charlamagne clearly came out letting them know, listen, I agree with Joe. You guys are wrong. But listen, that was not enough for them. They're not just taking the accountability. Tiffany Cross goes way deeper into the situation. She goes way deeper and she does not take a criticism. This is literally, I love you, black women. This is not all black women. But this is where y'all get that narrative that black women don't take accountability and black women don't listen. Listen to what she responds at.
Background aside, I want to say that as a journalist, before I bring up anything on this show, I want our viewers to know I have indeed done my due diligence.
No, you did not. You did not, lady. I'm sorry. I understand that you want to know that, so moving forward, you want to, make that claim, because I believe that she is someone that probably does do her research. But on this situation, you did not do your due diligence. You did not do your research. If you watch the Joe Budden podcast, they make these jokes all the time. They have these spouts. Mark is a different individual when he's on that podcast. He is the intellectual one, but we see a different side of Mark Lamont Hill, and this is why it's beautiful, and this is why he's grown a lot since he's been on the podcast. We don't just see Mark talking all this intellectual talk. We see him being who he is, somebody that was born in North Philly, but also that being infused with how smart and how intellectual that man is. So you don't do your research. You don't know.
So I didn't just watch the clip. How I prepared for that segment, I didn't pay for Patreon, but I did read the transcript of what happened. I even understood the word in question that was tricky, was allude. I understood that the conversation was about payment discrepancy. I spoke to Mark before I did the segment. I looked at literacy rates before I did the segment. I watched.
Hold on. What the hell do literacy rates got to do with anything? What do literacy rates got to do with anything, huh? What does that have to do with anything? And again, I believe that she watched the episode. I believe she looked at the transcript. I believe that she tried to get a contextual understanding of what actually happened. But you can't just get that from that episode. You have to understand the relationship of the cast members within the Joe Budden network. Like, this is a part of who they are. Joe creates a way where they kind of beef with each other. They make these kind of jokes. They have these type of things. They go on spaces. Like, it's a whole conglomerate of things that they do. It's not just this one instance. This instance was a blow up from a multitude of different shows and things that are being said. That's why Mark said there's a lot of things that you say are disrespectful. And Queen Spirit, there's a lot of shit that you say. Because it wasn't just that moment. It was a multitude of different things.
The few clips, or not clips, but segments, different segments from Joe Budden's podcast before I did this segment. And I will say, I stand by what I said. My perspectives and opinions don't sway in the winds of public opinion. Sometimes the cheese will stand alone. I do think there is very much a toxic landscape that is fueled by a lot of podcast bros. But I definitely agree with you, Charlamagne, before you have
podcast bros. And you have no idea what they do over there. You said that you watched this episode and these different segments within this episode, but you don't watch the podcast. How could you just put them in the category of podcast bros? You don't know what they do over there. Who do you think you are? And again, this is the narrative that the liberals try to do, right? They try to name the Joe Rogans, the Andrew Schultz, sometimes the Charlemagne the God and the Brilliant Idiots, the Theo Vons, the Tim Cass, right? The Myron Gaines, and just say, oh, they're just podcast bros. Their opinions don't matter because they're just over there doing nothing. And what we're doing over here, we're talking about important things in life. Look, nobody is listening to y'all. You don't have the audience. And I think that they don't understand that.
Interview with anybody before you sit down and speak on something. I would advise anyone to be well informed, whether it's politics, sports, anything like that. And so I don't think that the issue was that the collective was not well informed. I don't think that was my perspective. I think the issue that a lot of people felt is they felt attacked. And so I want to be clear that I wasn't saying who was an intellectual and who was not. My perspective was there is an anti-intellectual movement ravaging the Black community. I also want to be clear that I was not saying that no one should talk to Flip or Joe Budden. Certainly somebody should. Someone should be reaching out to them. That's not my ministry.
Tiff, it's interesting. You say you like talking to the incarcerated. Like, who do you think the incarcerated are listening to? Like, the incarcerated are listening to things like the Joe Budden podcast. Like, they're listening to, places like the Breakfast Club. Like that.
Like again, I understand what she's trying to express, right? I've been through those phases where I'm like studious. I want to study things, learn things. I don't want to just listen to just the drama and the culture and all that. I get that. But I've grown to learn that there's spaces for everything and everybody. So I get what she's saying. But for her to make it seem like the name of their podcast was the dumbing down of America. So it wasn't just saying that anti-intellectualism is sweeping Black America. No, it was the dumbing down of America. You're calling these individuals dumb, making it seem like what you do is important, what they do is not important. Just because people have a release, we have basketball games. You can say that about basketball, entertainment, movies. You can say that about anything that's a non-intellectual. It's the same thing. So just because they're having conversations about the culture, about hip hop music and things of that nature, does not mean that they are dumbing down America. This is the release from people. This is an entertainment relief that people want to get away from intellectual conversations, away from politics, away from their job, away from serious matters, and laugh, have fun, and just enjoy their time. But again, you think that you're better. But again, it gets worse, y'all. It gets worse. It does not stop there.
Frustrating is when you are not receptive or curious. I don't need to talk to people wherever you are, whatever your background is. If you're not receptive or curious, then you are likely not my audience and I'm likely not yours. I am curious about things. I can learn from anybody, but I don't necessarily respect everybody's opinion. And I don't think all the people say I respect everybody's opinion. Use a lie. I don't believe that.
Well, I agree because I've never respected your opinion. I do not respect your opinion at all.
There are people there. Go ahead.
Can you be intellectually curious without respecting everybody's opinion?
Yes. You looking at somebody who's intellectually curious without respecting everybody's opinion.
Because I consider myself intellectually curious, so I'm the type of person that I'm gonna hear you out. I may not want to hear you again, but I'm gonna at least take the opportunity to listen to you at least one time.
No, there's a gentleman by the name of Corey. He is a lovely person. He happens to be schizophrenic and homeless, and he's in the front of my building. And he has an opinion on everything. And I sit there and chat with Corey sometimes just because he's so nice and so sweet, and I give him bread because he likes to feed the birds. I don't respect Corey's opinion on anything. He got opinion on the financial systems and the banks and all the things that he wants to tell me about. I don't respect your opinion anymore. Like now, like you sound like a fool, and I'm giving you reason right there in real time, challenging you. I can't fill a cup that's already full. So now, no, I don't respect your opinion. And Bakari said this is South Carolina saying, but I think all black folks say this. If I'm arguing with a fool from a distance, you can't tell the difference. I don't need to be where fools gather. If somebody else feels called to say no, it is my ministry to go inform, to go educate this particular group of people. I wouldn't.
But what particular group of people that is that? Like the Native Land podcast, they situate themselves as a podcast for black people, right? And what Charlamagne is trying to say, and what I believe is that the Joe Budden podcast, that's where you can go to get the most amount of eyeballs from the black community. You're supposed to educate the uneducated, the people who don't know the things in politics that you may know, the things that you may know in law that they don't know. That's where you're supposed to go. But you're calling them fools. You're calling his audience fools. You're calling them fools. But the intellectuals that are in our community, they still go watch and listen to the Joe Budden podcast. It's the #1 black podcast in the world. So what are you talking about, man? You're just talking to talk because, again, you live in that liberal ideology where it's only your way or the highway, and you don't want to hear no one else's opinion except yours. That's what it is. You don't care about nothing else. You think everyone's wrong except you. Only you.
Never shit on that. Like, that's just not even my way. I'm like, live and let live, go do it. That's just not what I choose to do.
I understand. I guess the issue comes, and I can't believe I'm on here defending the Joe Budden podcast, right? but I guess the issue is,
that's the funny part about it, because I'm sorry for keep stopping it, y'all. But that's the funny part about this, because Charlamagne and Joe Budden, they actually have their own little beef. Like, it's not like they have any real beef, but like they have their little competitive media, empires that they both compete with. Where Charlamagne has his way of doing things, Joe Budden has his way of doing things. They talk, but they have their own little beef in and of itself. On the podcast, when Joe was going off on the Native Land podcast, he called them Charlamites. Because Charlamagne was the one who freaking introduced them to the world. So the fact that Charlamagne is actually defending Joe Budden in this thing is absolutely huge. But she's still not trying to hear it. This is what being an independent woman, standing 10 toes, being hard-headed and not listening to a male figure trying to tell you something, but you are just so right and you think everything that you're saying is right. This is what we're seeing in 4K.
I don't think fools go together at the Joe Budden podcast. Like, I don't think anybody in that room...
I didn't say that, for the record.
Yeah, I don't think anybody in that room is a fool. And I also feel like, we should be happy that people like Mark Lamont Hill want to be on big black platforms. I think that's the biggest problem I have right now is that, we tend to knock, certain platforms when what we should be doing is infiltrating those platforms. Like, I know everybody likes to... go at Stephen A. Smith. I want to see more black elected officials, more black politicians, more black spiritual leaders, more black activists, more black people with something to say about black issues go on platforms like Stephen A. Smith.
I'm not complaining about anyone having a large audience. I'm complaining about who his audience is. He has a large audience of mostly conservative white folk.
See, now look, I'm going to show y'all the last clip, but now she's about to embarrass herself because now she's mad about Stephen A. Smith. She can't listen to what Charlamagne was just trying to express right now, which I agree with Charlamagne, right? Whenever anybody who's black or conservative has a different ideology, these people shut them out. I've said it a million times. They call them coons, Uncle Toms. They're saying that you're just trying to bow down to the white man. They say all these different things. But it's proof that it's not like they're just trying to fight the white man. No, they're trying to fight anyone who has a different ideology. What I believe, and just what Charlamagne is trying to say, a Joe Budden should be someone who you should be trying to extend your hand to get as much information out to the community because they have a large audience. She's about to now talk about Stephen A. Smith and why she doesn't like Stephen A. Smith, because she assumes that his audience is all white conservative men, which she's about to absolutely embarrass herself. And we all know this. And I'm going to play this and I'm going to give y'all my final thoughts. And we're going to get up out of here.
And they are treating him. This is no diss to Stephen. Do you have data to back
that up, Tiffany? Do you have statistics that say Stephen A. Smith's audience is majority conservative white folks?
I do. Nielsen ratings, or his ESPN show, Nielsen ratings qualifies that.
Oh, no, that's ESPN. I'm talking about his podcast, because most of the time when he's spewing political takes...
I don't know his podcast. I just know he built his audience on a majority of white people. So I don't, and I would love to dig into, and I'm happy to come on here next week, because I would love to somebody to prove to me that his audience is a majority of black people.
See, that's a feeling, but that's a fact. So that make you anti-intellectual because you're spewing feelings instead?
No, but it's not even.
Before, because Angela Rye about to cut her off, because Angela Rye knows she looks crazy now. right? So she about to cut her off, and they gonna get into a little argument. But see, this is the shit that bothers me. She brought up some whatever statistic she brought up about ESPN and what the majority of his audience is. Black people watch sports. Regardless if we like Stephen A. Smith, we're gonna go listen to what the hell Stephen A. Smith has to say. Who else are we listening to? We've been listening to Stephen A. Smith for over 20 years. In media, 50% of the people are going to like what you say. 50% of the people are going to not like what you say, but they're still going to pay attention and they're going to listen to what you say. Skip Bayless. A lot of people don't like Skip Bayless, but they paid attention to what Skip Bayless had to say. See, there be maybe more white people in this world because in the world of sports, right, it's everyone who's paying attention. It's white, black, Asian. Everyone's watching sports. They're watching sports media, and Stephen A. has been the loudest voice in sports media for the past 10 to 15 to 20 years. So you can't just say that, oh, only white men go listen to Stephen A. Smith about sports. What are you talking about? Now, when you talk about the political sphere now, maybe I can agree with you a little bit, but there's no data, there's no proof to show that because there's a lot of black men that are conservative, that's leaving the liberal party, that don't like the way that you're acting right now, and that's the reason why they're leaving the liberal party. They're going to listen to Stephen A. Smith because it's a breath of fresh air. Because a lot of these black men, they really aren't Republican. They just are tired of the shit that you're doing right here. You're forcing them to believe something that they don't actually believe in. But they don't really believe in conservative values. But they don't believe the bullshit that you're talking about either. They're more in the middle. And Stephen A. does give that refreshing approach to being in the middle of the political aisle. And you're not listening. If you guys listen, you guys can maybe freaking win some shit. Let me finish playing this shit, and then we're going to get up out of here.
I'm going to respond to this. It's not even a feeling, though.
It's literally 5 minutes left in the conversation.
But I want to respond to what he said.
You guys haven't let anybody else weigh in
I'll
here.
weigh in, but I'm going to respond to this. He said that's a feeling or an opinion. Not necessarily. It's somewhat informed because if you look at who his audience, how he built his audience, the suggestion that a majority of his audience would be comprised of black people is not a well-informed one. It's logic to say most of his audience are white people. Are you suggesting that most of his audience are black people?
I don't know what most of his audience is, but I know I started, reading Stephen A.'s columns when he was writing for the Philadelphia Inquirer, when he was covering Allen Iverson way back in the day. And then I followed him to Full Pizza and First Take and everything else. I think that this new, political Stephen A. with a conservative audience is relatively new. So before these white people were talking about him, it was majority black people in the barbershop that was talking about Stephen A. But I'm just talking about the audience in general. Like you said, Mark Lamont Hill shouldn't be on Joe Budden's show. Why? You said you actually said he should be on CNN.
Yes. So that's the difference between saying he should not be on Joe Budden.
All right, so I made it there, y'all. So let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. I know that was a live. You stayed this long. I really appreciate you. Like always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think about how Charlamagne confronted his employees. I believe he owns a Black Effect podcast. I believe this is on the Black Effect Network. And so let me know how y'all feel about that and how Tiffany Cross in particular responded to it. I appreciate y'all. Like always, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. And I will see you on the next one. We out here.